No doubt that the previous era is over. It's finished. He can, he can grumble all he wants. He can scream and shout all he wants. No one cares. Iran will control the Strait of Hormuz, and it's finished. It's over. It's not going to be intimidated by Trump if Iran is prepared for a full assault that may take place moments from now. It may take place tonight. It may take place tomorrow. It may not happen, but the Iranians are working on the assumption that it will happen. Now the Iranian policy towards the Emirates has changed, and Iran is saying that it's going to start treating the Emirates like it treats northern Iraq. There are all sorts of military bases in northern Iraq for terrorist organizations against Iran. And what the Iranians have been doing is that they've been bombing them regularly. But that policy is now being expanded to the UAE. And so the Iranians basically are saying that in future, if we see any threat to Iran from anywhere in this territory, we will strike. No, Iran won't accept that. No enriched uranium is going to leave Iranian territory. That's the Iranian position. Basically, what happened was that, of course, the United States started this. And if you look at Western media, you'd think it was Iran. And the US government also pretends it was Iran, but they started, as you pointed out, by striking tankers. And they killed a number of sailors. I know that one was killed and a number were missing on one tanker. I don't know what the fate of what their fate was, but the Americans are not. They're just killing innocent people. Just like a few days ago when we had another battle in the near the Strait of Hormuz, they fired on civilian boats, and one person was killed. Initially, they said 5 people were killed, but one person was killed. And by the way, no Iranian boats, military boats, no Iranian naval boats have been hit in the last couple of weeks. I mean, in either of these two naval conflicts were Iranian naval boats struck, not one. U.S. ships were struck, but with drones. The missiles, from my understanding, were fired at them, but mostly to scare them. But drones were fired, and a number of drones did strike the ships.
US struck first. No Iranian military vessel hit. Iran chose controlled damage, not escalation.
But the drones were intended to do damage, but not to do serious damage. So the missiles were fired not to strike. They didn't plan to strike the ships with the missiles. This is my understanding. But they, because if the missiles struck the ships, then it would have created a new wave of tensions. And Iran right now doesn't want to be seen as starting a new aggression. Well, aggression always starts from the Americans, but Iran doesn't want to be seen as the side that does escalation for a host of reasons. Because the international community wants this to die down, and the Iranians want to be seen as they have been seen to be the responsible actor.
Controlled escalation. Iran choosing the optics deliberately.
Ships that are from those 5 countries. Remember, the Strait of Hormuz has never been closed, never, by the Iranians. Ships that are linked to countries that are friendly to Iran or that have not participated in the war in any way or form, those ships go through. So the Chinese, the Russians, Iraqi ships, ships from countries like India and Pakistan, even though some of them their ships had oil from these countries or LNG from these 5 countries that were part of the war, they negotiated and got some of their ships through. The limitations are for Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. And it's because they fought in the war. They helped the Americans launch murderous strikes on the country, missile strikes, air strikes, naval strikes. So they're partners in crime, and there's no reason why Iran should allow their ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz under such circumstances. So the Americans were trying to carry out this this operation to get ships to go through these ships to go through the strait. They failed. I think that's in itself evidence of failure.
5 countries chose a side. Now, paying for it.
But Iran is still expecting a major assault, and of course they've been expecting it for quite a while now. I think on probably the last 2 programs that I was on your show, I said that Iran is waiting for an imminent assault that could happen any hour, and that's the same as we speak now. The Americans have also their forces in position. They brought in a lot of equipment for ground operations too, and the Iranians believe that an attack could be imminent. So the Iranian armed forces are on full alert. But this has been the situation, as I said, for a couple of weeks at least now. I don't know.
Ground forces. Equipment already moves in. Full alert. And then he says this.
We've seen the reports by marine traffic that in the last 24 hours, not a single commercial ship passed through the Strait of Hormuz.
Iran is prepared to fight. And I think the world now recognizes what sort of nation the Trump regime is dealing with in this coalition of evil, this Epstein coalition, what they're dealing with. And they know that they cannot defeat Iran.
Welcome back to ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson. On this channel, we don't just cover the news. We cut through the noise, dominate the narrative, and give you the analysis mainstream media is too scared to run. Vigilance is our shield. Truth is our weapon. Let's get into it. 8 minutes of Marandi from inside Tehran. Now, let's break down what he actually said. Starting with what I think is the most significant policy shift in this conversation. Iran has changed how it deals with the UAE permanently.
I think that from the very beginning, the Iranians did consider the UAE to be different from the others. It had more a closer alliance with the Israeli regime. It was so bad that even the Saudis were becoming frustrated with their behavior, and we saw how in Yemen and even in Sudan, it began to affect Saudi policy. These 5 countries are partners in the war against Iran. They have no excuse for what they've done to the Iranian people. But so now the Iranian policy towards the Emirates has changed, and Iran is saying that it's going to start treating the Emirates like it treats northern Iraq. What is northern Iraq like? It is an ally of the Zionist regime. The Kurdish government in Erbil is very close to the Israeli regime. And of course it's close to the United States and NATO, but it's an ally of the Israeli regime. And so it allows terrorist organizations, despite the fact that the Iraqi central government does not accept this, but they use the U.S. influence in Iraq, and especially in northern Iraq, to allow terrorist organizations to open up military bases. There are all sorts of military bases in northern Iraq for terrorist organizations against Iran. And what the Iranians have been doing is that they've been bombing them regularly. And they will continue to do so, because the belief is that once the United States assault begins, these terrorists will move into Iran from northern Iraq. That is the plan. And also terrorists from the border with Pakistan, the Wahhabi terror organizations that are funded by Western agencies that regularly carry out attacks near the Pakistani border, that they will launch an assault from there. and that these terrorists and Kurdish groups, but also others, will launch an attack from northern Iraq as the United States and the Israeli regime bomb Iran and probably bomb Iranian critical infrastructure like electrical power plants, and that is what uh, they are saying may happen in Iran. Well, that is what Iran is preparing itself for. So as we speak, they're striking these terror groups in northern Iraq. But of course, if this actually happens, Iran will start striking Erbil itself and the government. They'll bring down the government, and the Iraqi resistance will target the government too, because Iran will no longer tolerate um, a Kurdish pro-Zionist local government in northern Iraq anymore after this, if there's such an operation launched against Iran. But that policy is now being expanded to the UAE. And so the Iranians basically are saying that in future, if we see any threat to Iran from anywhere in this territory, we will strike.
Let me make sure that landed. Iran is not saying we might retaliate if attacked from UAE. Iran is saying UAE is now classified as an active threat zone, the same category as northern Iraq, where Iran reserves the right to strike without warning. So what does this mean in practice? In northern Iraq, Iran has been conducting regular strikes against what it describes as hostile bases, without warning, without diplomatic process. That is now the declared policy for UAE territory. On Morandi's claim about Mossad presence in UAE, this is documented. Former Mossad chief Yossi Cohen has publicly stated his role in the restructuring of the Emirati security apparatus post-Abraham Accords. Israeli arms makers showcased weapons at Abu Dhabi's IDEX Defense exhibition in February 2025. Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE was used throughout the 2026 campaign. This is all on the record. Saudi Arabia and UAE have been diverging since at least late 2025. Saudi officials have raised concerns about Abu Dhabi's alignment with Tel Aviv across multiple regional flashpoints: Yemen, Sudan, Somalia. The UAE-Israel axis is not Morandi's invention. It is documented policy reality. What is new is Iran formally extending its northern Iraq doctrine to UAE territory. And then the statement that I think is the most consequential thing said publicly about this war in days.
Oh, no doubt that the previous era is over. It's finished. He can, he can grumble all he wants. He can scream and shout all he wants. No one cares. Iran will control the Strait of Hormuz, and it's finished. It's over. And Iran wants a security structure or architecture for the region, for the Persian Gulf region, where the United States can no longer be a threat. That's where no one can be a threat. All the countries in this region should have a vested interest in peace and stability here, because all the countries gain their wealth from the Persian Gulf. So when these five regimes assisted the United States in its genocidal war, they brought misery upon their own people. They've ruined their own economies. They've wrecked their own infrastructure. To whose benefit? Even these despots don't benefit. So in future, we have to have a security architecture where the United States no longer plays a role.
Death spots. Morandi's term for the Gulf state regimes. His language, from Tehran. Whether you agree with the characterization or not, it is spreading in global alternative media, and you deserve to hear it directly. But the substantive point under the language is hard to argue with. Morandi is saying even the Gulf states that allied with the US and Israel gained nothing from this war. Their oil is not moving. Their economies are damaged. Their infrastructure was hit. They chose that outcome. Rubio said publicly that the US will not accept Iranian control of the Strait. Morandi's response is essentially, we don't need your acceptance. The Strait is already under Iranian control. That is the physical reality right now. And that's not rhetoric. Marine traffic data reported by Nima Al-Khurshid, 0 commercial ships through the Strait in the 24 hours before this conversation. 0. day 71. On the jet fuel situation, Nima cited from the Wall Street Journal. This is verified and the actual source is stronger than the Wall Street Journal. IEA Director Fatih Birol told the Associated Press directly, and quote, maybe 6 weeks or so of jet fuel left for Europe. That interview was published April 2026. The Airport Councils International Europe separately warned the EU of a systemic jet fuel shortage. Jet fuel exports through the Strait are down 30% in April versus last year per Kepler data. Marandi uses a term in this conversation that has been spreading fast in alternative media. I'm not going to skip past it. You need to hear it and understand what it means. Directly from someone speaking from inside a country that has been at war for 71 days.
Iran is prepared to fight. And I think the world now recognizes what sort of nation the Trump regime is dealing with in this coalition of evil, this Epstein coalition, what they're dealing with. And they know that they cannot defeat Iran. And as long as this current situation continues, the United States is literally dragging the world over a cliff. Netanyahu and Trump are literally dragging the world over a cliff. Every single day that goes by, it's getting worse. And after a point, it is going to get worse much more swiftly.
Epstein coalition and coalition of evil. Morandi's characterization of the alliance between the US, Israel, and Gulf states prosecuting this war. I'm not adopting this framing, but I am going to be direct. This term is trending in global alternative media right now. And the reason it resonates is that it implies a class of political actors whose connections and interests override national affiliation. You can agree or disagree with that analysis, but you need to know why it exists and why it is spreading. Dragging the world over a cliff. This is not hyperbole from where Marandi stands. It is a description of the supply chain data. IEA Director Fatih Birol told the AP, Europe has maybe 6 weeks or so of jet fuel left. That was in April. We're now in May. Jet fuel exports through the Strait are down 30% in April versus the same month last year. Jet fuel loaded on tankers last week dropped 50% compared to the same week in 2025 per Kepler. Airports Council International Europe warned the EU on April 9th that a systemic jet fuel shortage is coming if the Strait does not reopen. Lufthansa has already shut down feeder airline CityLine. KLM cut 160 flights. EasyJet projects a £540 million loss for the first half of fiscal 2026. The Wikipedia article on the 2026 Iran war fuel crisis, updated 2 days ago as of this recording, describes what the IEA has called the largest supply disruption in the history of global oil market. Every day the Strait stays closed, more of this arrives. Marandi is not exaggerating the cliff. He lives next to it. And then the two most direct statements Marandi makes in the entire conversation.
We've just learned that the United States has removed 13.5 kilograms enriched uranium from Venezuela. And Donald Trump is talking about that he's going to do the same with the case of Iran. He's going to remove and he's going to go, the enriched uranium going to go to the United States. What is the Iranian position?
No, Iran won't accept that. No enriched uranium is going to leave Iranian territory. That's the Iranian position. I think that after all this time, the Americans should have learned the lesson by now. But it's in their arrogance, they can't. The Iranians are prepared to go to war again. As I said, we're prepared for war. The belief is that war is very close. The chances for war are very high. That's not going to intimidate Iran. Over the past 2-3 days, you saw the U.S. Secretary of State and Trump both say that we're waiting for Iran's response. It should come in today. Iran is in no rush. Iran will give them the response when they deem it appropriate. But from right now, I can tell you, without being involved in the decision-making process at all, that Iran's response is not going to be something that the Americans like. There's no doubt about it. The Iranians will only have peace based on the 10-point plan that Iran presented, and the United States agreed to conduct negotiations within that framework. For the priority for Iran right now is a ceasefire, which includes Lebanon, which includes Gaza, which includes the entire region, and the lifting of the siege on the Strait of Hormuz.
Two flat statements. No uranium leaves Iran, full stop. And Iran's response to the US proposal will not be what Washington wants to hear. On Venezuela uranium, Morandi says the US removed 13.5 kilograms of enriched uranium from Venezuela. He attributes this to sources in Iran. The sequencing Iran is insisting on tells you everything about how far apart these two sides actually are. Iran's priority order: ceasefire on all fronts including Lebanon and Gaza, then lift the siege on the Strait, then the 10-point plan. And only at the very bottom, after all of that, does nuclear negotiation come up. Washington position: nuclear deal first as the price of everything else. These are not positions that are close to each other. They are structurally incompatible in their current form. And Morandi, without being in the room, is telling you Iran's response is coming on Iran's timeline and will not be what the US wants. That is the same structural picture Johnson described on day 70. Ritter described it. McGregor described it. Now Morandi from Tehran is saying it in the most direct language yet. And finally, Morandi's read on Kushner and a former IDF officer being added to the US negotiating team, and his closing statement on where all of this ends.
Want to see this sort of thing happen because it proves to Americans and the international audience too, those that are watching closely, how much control the Zionists have over the United States. The United States is not controlled by the American people. The United States is controlled by the Zionists. And the very fact that they dictate who sits at the negotiating table, the very fact that they dictate policy, the very fact that they can drag the country into war, despite the fact that ordinary people don't want it, despite the propaganda, I think just shows that the United States is an occupied country. And that is a good thing for more people to see the United States as an occupied country. That's in Iran's interest. Otherwise, with or without him, the Iranians are not counting on the United States seeing the light and coming to some sort of peace agreement with Iran. The best that we will be able to see is I think, this is my speculation, is a ceasefire. A ceasefire where the Israeli regime is forced to withdraw from Lebanon, where the fighting stops in Gaza and in Lebanon, where the United States pulls its troops away, and the Strait of Hormuz is open for business. And we go back to the Cold War of the years past. The only difference is that the world is changing much faster now than even before the war. And the empire's fate, in my opinion, is sealed.
Occupied country. Morandi's characterization of US foreign policy being shaped by Israel lobby interest over American national interest. This is his analytical framework from Tehran. I flag it clearly as his position, not mine. What I can engage with is the documented fact underneath it. The addition of a former IDF officer to the US negotiating team with Iran is a reported development. Whether that signals what Morandi says it signals, that is your judgment to make. Note that both Larry Johnson and Morandi referenced this addition. In the Larry Johnson video from May 8th, Johnson called the individual Schwartz or something from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. The empire's fate, in my opinion, is sealed, Morandi says. This as his personal assessment, not Iranian government policy. And I want to be precise about what he actually means. He is not predicting a military defeat on a specific date. He is describing a trajectory. Every escalation has weakened the US position, not strengthened it. Every operation has failed. Gulf states are hedging. China holds the financial architecture. Russia holds the energy leverage. India is shifting, and Iran has demonstrated it can absorb 40 days of the most intensive US-Israeli bombing campaign in the region's history and emerge producing more missiles than before. From that vantage point, the empire's fate being sealed is not a prediction. It is a description of a direction already in motion. Every analyst in this series, Johnson, Ritter, McGregor, has pointed at the same endpoint from different angles. Morandi is saying it in the most direct language yet, from inside the country that has been carrying the fight. Here's what I take. Morandi is speaking from inside Tehran, not analyzing from a distance, and the picture he draws is consistent across every data point. No Iranian military vessel has been hit. 0 commercial ships through the Strait on May 9th. UAE is now formally classified as a threat zone in Iranian doctrine. No enriched uranium leaves Iranian soil. Iran's response to the US proposal is coming on Iran's schedule, and it will not be what Washington wants. Morandi uses language I do not adopt wholesale. Epstein coalition, death spots, occupied country. These are his characterizations from his vantage point, inside a country at war for 71 days. Whether you find that language useful or not, the factual picture underneath is still consistent with everything else covered in this series. IEA Director Birol told the AP, Europe has maybe 6 weeks left of jet fuel left. Jet fuel exports through the Strait are down 30% in April. The world is consuming reserves, not new supply. The empire's fate, in Morandi's opinion, is sealed. I don't know if that's true, but what I do notice is that no one in a position to know is seriously arguing otherwise right now. Alright, Morandi just said it flat out from Tehran. The Strait is Iran's now. UAE is the new northern Iraq. No uranium is going anywhere. And Iran's response to Washington is coming on Iran's schedule, not theirs. Here's the thing though. Morandi also said something that I keep turning over in my head. He said the solution is actually right there. Ceasefire, lift the siege, and a lot of this ends fast. Simple. So if it's that simple, why isn't it happening? Is it that Netanyahu is blocking it? Is it Trump's domestic politics? Is it something nobody's saying out loud yet? I genuinely want to know what you think. Drop it in the comments below. And if you've been watching this series and you're starting to see the same picture forming from every angle, hit subscribe. That'll mean a lot. This is ARM Geopolitics. I'm Aaron Johnson. Stay sharp, stay informed, and never stop questioning. I'll see you in the next one.